Honestly, I don't mind if people say that Jesus gives their life meaning and purpose. If that's what they want to believe, okay by me. But if someone tries to tell me that not having Jesus means my life don't have any meaning or purpose, I get a little bit riled. Because meaning and purpose don't come from any God. They come from the material world. Hey there, folks. I'm Bertram, the Barely Bearable Atheist, and I used to be a born-again, Bible-believing, conservative, evangelical Christian. I can remember what it was like to have Jesus give meaning and purpose to my life, and now that I'm an atheist, I think I know what it's like to have meaning and purpose even without Jesus. So I think I can say a few things about what meaning and purpose are and what role religion plays in how we experience them. So first of all, let's tackle this notion that our lives have no meaning and purpose without Jesus. I mean, you'll hear Christians say this sometimes, and they'll back it up by saying something like, if this life is all there is, then everything's pointless because we're just going to die someday. They're trying to make it sound like either something has eternal consequences or else it has no meaning or purpose at all. And that's exactly backwards. Christians go to bed just like everybody else, even though they know they're only going to wake up in the morning, most likely anyway. They get up and get a shower, even though their bodies are only going to get dirty again. They breakfast, even though they're only going to get hungry again. And they can tell you the meaning and purpose of each of those activities, just like anyone else can. They're not going to say, oh, what's the point of going to work if I'm just going to die someday? Or even if you think you're going to live forever, you know you're not going to be doing the same job for all eternity. But that don't mean it's pointless to do your job. A thing don't have to be eternal to have genuine meaning and purpose. It has meaning and purpose right here and right now. And that was something that really took me by surprise when I deconverted from Christianity. I'd been so committed to Jesus that I was missing out on the real-life meaning and purpose all around me. I believed it was wrong to place any value on anything material and temporary because Christians are only supposed to care about eternity. And that's backwards. The opportunities we have here and now are infinitely more precious precisely because this is our only chance to experience and appreciate them. Now, imagine if we was dead, we've gone to heaven, and it's now our 3 billionth year of eternal life. Do you think we'd even remember anything from our mortal years in 3 billion years from now? Are we going to care whether we had sugary cereal for breakfast on Tuesday, the 17th of December when we was 18? Are we going to remember that brilliant, fiery sunset on that warm summer evening when we sat on the back porch with our spouse listening to the tree frogs? And what about 3 billion times 3 billion years? And 3 billion times that? That's an unimaginably long period of time, and even that much ain't anywhere near the end of eternity. Our mortal years are nothing, relatively speaking. There's no lasting significance to anything that happens in our earthly life, good or bad, if you say everything has to be measured against the scale of eternity. And yes, I know that according to the gospel, these few meaningless years are supposed to determine our eternal fate. Either we gonna spend all of eternity suffering the most agonizing tortures imaginable, or else we gonna enjoy the most pleasurable bliss imaginable, depending on which religion we choose while we're alive. Now that seems just a tad extreme, don't it? Putting someone through eternal torment just 'cause they made one wrong choice during the tiniest, most insignificant interval of their entire existence? But that's what Christianity says. And the thing is, if that's the case, then that one choice is the only significant thing in your entire life, relatively speaking. It's like the evangelists always say, literally, nothing else matters by comparison. Your parents don't matter, nor your spouse, your kids, your job, your home, your bills, your savings, your health. Nothing else matters. Only your choice of religion matters, according to Christianity. But here's the thing. Any religion that comes into your life and reduces everything else to nothing, that makes everything else meaningless and pointless, that's a religion that's consuming all the meaning and purpose out of your life. It ain't giving you meaning and purpose. It's erasing everything else and setting itself up as a monopoly. And that's a net loss, not a net gain. Christians actually lose a lot of the natural meaning and purpose that's inherent in our material experience. And you'll even hear that preached in sermons as if it were a good thing. Pastors routinely preach on how earthly things are empty and pointless and about to be destroyed forever in order to encourage believers not to be quote-unquote distracted by the things of this world. And according to the Bible, even Jesus himself said you ain't worthy of them if you love your family, who are right here with you, more than you love Jesus, who ain't. Meanwhile, life here and now is full of meaning and purpose, and Christianity don't add to it. When Christians say that meaning and purpose are found only in Jesus, they're admitting that they're missing out on the rest of natural meaning and purpose. I missed out for decades as a born-again, Bible-believing Christian, and when I deconverted, I was amazed. I felt like I'd find the lost treasures of El Dorado. So much meaning and purpose all around me, and I'd never really appreciated it because my mind was distracted with fantasies about some future eternal bliss. And yet it was there all along. Okay, life is ephemeral and passes quickly, but true wisdom is learning to recognize it and appreciate it while you got it, precisely because it ain't gonna last. And if that makes you afraid and makes you close your eyes to it so you can dream about some future eternal fantasy life, you're going to miss it. Your life will end someday, and you'll have wasted the only opportunity you're ever going to get. And to me, that's the ultimate example of a tragic and pointless existence. And of course, Christians will disagree with me, and that's fine. But the point is, they ought to recognize that there's plenty of meaning and purpose outside of Jesus, even if Christians ain't willing or able to recognize it. But then again, to be fair, I don't really mind all that much if they do miss the point and fail to learn about secular meaning and purpose. I mean, I'll correct them if they show off their ignorance publicly, but I recognize their right to live in their own little bubble if that's what they want to do, as long as they respect other people's right to live outside of it. Because I remember what it was like to be a Christian and how exciting it was to think that God was somehow taking an active role in my life. And granted, it was kind of frustrating at times because he would never actually speak to me out loud. And whenever I tried to hear his voice in my heart, well, it was a better than average bet that I'd just be hearing whatever I wanted to hear. Like, I remember one time when I was in college, God spoke to me in my heart and told me he'd picked out the perfect wife for me. And I was thrilled, because as far as I could tell, she would be ideal. Only problem was, he forgot to tell her. In fact, she wouldn't even go out with me. Kind of stunned me for a minute. But I was too proud to beg, so after that we were just friends. But that's the kind of problem you run into when you try to figure out God's purpose for your life. He don't talk to you out loud, so you have to try and listen with your heart and make your best guess based on how you feel and what you figure the Bible teaches and maybe what your friends tell you and what you see going on and such. It's kind of hit or miss. But still, that sort of thing can be exciting in a play detective kind of way. Every little thing that happens, Christians figure either God is sending them some kind of message or else the devil is attacking them and they need God's help. It's kind of a LARP, a live action role play. God and the devil are the non-player characters and believers are the players, and the pastor or preacher is kind of like the dungeon master if you've ever played D&D. There's prayer instead of magic spells and things like fasting and meditation and, of course, Bible study. They're supposed to make you spiritually stronger, which is kind of like leveling up. But, yeah, it's just like being in a live-action role play, except you don't ever stop playing it. Of course, when I was a believer, I didn't see it that way at all, but looking back on it now, that's pretty much what it was, just an endless self-generated charade that we made up as we went along so we could convince ourselves that God was giving our life meaning and purpose. And we made ourselves believe that it was all spiritually real somehow, even though in practice it's equal parts exciting and frustrating and confusing. And let me tell you, as an ex-Christian, it is a huge relief to be free from all that finally. And there were good parts, but it weren't worth the frustration and disappointment and cognitive dissonance. So look, like I said, I'm not here to tell believers that they can't do that if they want to. And I know that there's some believers who are bedridden or otherwise enduring some kind of chronic ongoing suffering, and they depend on their religious beliefs to get them through the day. And if they get some kind of comfort out of believing that Jesus is reaching out to help them somehow, I sure as hell ain't going to try and take that away from them. I mean, whatever works. I just want them to feel better. Where I do draw the line, though, is when believers try to draw in non-believers in a kind of non-player character role to serve as targets and scapegoats for their bigotry and fears and frustrations. If you're going to convince yourself that God is sending you messages about your life, that's one thing. But if you're going to say God is unhappy with you because you're not being cruel enough towards women or ignorant or immigrants or non-binary folks or some other minority, then we got a problem. And unfortunately, when people try to follow an imaginary God, their imagination leads them in that direction all too easily, especially when they're being egged on by dishonest politicians. Go ahead and get your meaning and purpose from God if you want to, but leave the rest of us out of it. If you think your God is telling you to be cruel toward people who ain't doing any harm to anybody, then you need a better God, or else no God at all. I guess that would be better. I'll close with one last thought about meaning and purpose, and that is that it's really hard to worship an imaginary God because it's a one-sided relationship. God don't initiate anything on his own, and he don't respond to anything you do on his behalf. It's up to you and your imagination and superstition to uphold both sides of the relationship, and that's a lot of work. You do it because of peer pressure and social reinforcement, but it's hard, and you need to come up with some kind of rationalization for why you're putting yourself through all that. And I think that's what this notion of meaning and purpose is. It's a rationalization. It's something you can claim you're getting out of this difficult relationship so as you can feel better about all the effort you're putting into it. But here's the thing. When we're in a real, meaningful relationship with a real person, we're too busy interacting with that other person to think about our relationship in terms of broad, abstract topics like meaning and purpose. We got stuff we're doing together and ideas and plans we're sharing, and that's what we talk about when we're talking about us. And that's the thing. Real relationships have specific things to talk about. We don't feel the need to come up with some kind of broad philosophical justification for it. But the relationship folks have with their imaginary God ain't real, so the specifics are missing. The whole reason the so-called meaning and purpose come up as an apologetic argument is because a believer's relationship with God is fundamentally one-sided and empty, despite what they say. The substance of a real relationship just ain't there. So, yeah, a lot of apologists try to tell me that my life apart from Jesus has no meaning or purpose, but I know better. I've seen Christian meaning and purpose from the Christian side, and I've devoted literally decades of my short life to it. And it's a sham. Real meaning and purpose come from the material world, and if we don't experience them and appreciate them here and now, then by the time we get to the end of our life, we'll have missed out. My Christian faith actively encouraged me to turn my back on real-world meaning and purpose, but once I left the church, my life became truly meaningful for the first time. So I do kind of chuckle when apologists try to pull that one on me. No, been there, done that, bought the jacket, and I won't make that mistake again. Well, I'm sure that there's lots more that could be said, but that about wraps it up for me today. Thanks for watching, and please be kind wherever possible.